Something happened in Washington today that almost no one saw coming. And the moment it dropped, the entire conversation around the Epstein files shifted in a way that could finally force decades of secrecy into the light. A single amendment, just a few lines of text, instantly put some of the most powerful people in the country on notice. Because for the first time, someone with real authority said the quiet part out loud. It's time to release everything, not summaries, not selective pages, not the polished versions we've seen in the past. Everything. This moment didn't happen in a committee room. It didn't happen behind closed doors. It happened on camera, without hesitation, and you could feel the shock ripple even before the reporters reacted.
And must be held accountable. My colleague from Oregon, Senator Ron Wyden, and the Senate Finance Committee have been investigating Mr. Epstein's financial network for the last 3 years. The Biden administration fully cooperated with the Senate investigators on that case. The Finance Committee staff went to the Treasury Department to see the Epstein files and suspicious activity reports. Democrats understood that this was an ongoing investigation. We applauded the Biden administration for cooperating, and that was the right course. But now we're under a different administration. Instead of cooperating, the Trump administration is obstructing. The Trump administration and Attorney General Bondi are refusing to cooperate, and they are refusing to investigate further. They're simply saying 2 words: case closed. Case closed? When they have their hands on information potentially regarding dozens or hundreds of individuals who abused young women. So today we had a chance to vote on whether the case is closed. We had before us an amendment which said, deliver the files. Create the force of law, deliver the files. And 51 senators in this body, I am ashamed to say, said, hell no. We want them kept secret. We want to protect the perpetrators. Why? Because the man in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump, told us he wants us to protect those files, does not want them public. On July 17th, the Wall Street Journal reported on a letter allegedly written by Trump to Epstein as part of a birthday book for his 50th birthday in 2003. The letter is signed at the bottom, Donald. It features a drawing of a woman's body with very suggestive text. I debated putting that letter up. There's a chart of it in the door behind me, but it's already been made public. The public has seen it. I find it profoundly offensive letter. And as I passed by a stack of newspapers today, I saw a series of examples of Donald Trump's signature because Trump has said to the world, it's not my signature. But of course, the experts say that's not true. The birthday book contains another photo of Mr. Epstein holding an oversized novelty check from DJ Trump for $22,500. What is that check for? Underneath the photo, taken in the 1990s, a handwritten note says, quote, Jeffrey showing early talents with money and women. Cells fully depreciated, and then there's a name of a woman who's been blocked out to Donald Trump for $22,500. I don't know if a woman was sold to Donald Trump for $22,500. I don't know what it means to call a woman fully depreciated. I don't know if it was just kind of a brazen joke between a couple of very powerful men, but it's certainly not a funny joke. It certainly implies and suggests a camaraderie in the idea that young women are for sale. On July 15th, House Speaker Mike Johnson told CNN, "We should put everything out there and let the people decide it." Well, actions are more powerful than words. The words were, "We should put everything out there." The action was he adjourned the House of Representatives early for August recess to avoid voting on release of the files. Well, the House is back in session now. So I call on Speaker Mike Johnson to stand up for the principle carved above those pillars on the Supreme Court, equal justice under law, hold a vote in the House of Representatives on release of the files. The leader of the Senate told Fox News, "I always am a believer in transparency. I think more is always better." Today we voted on transparency, and the vote from across the aisle was case closed, no transparency, no accountability. I certainly agree with the sentiment. It's time to put everything out there. The American people have been clear. They want these files released because they still treasure the idea that possibly powerful people in this chamber actually believe in the principles that we were raised on here in the United States of America of equal justice under law, that nobody is above the law. Still cherish that little seed of hope that maybe when we have a vote in this chamber, 100 senators will say, hell yes. But today, they were crushed because the majority said, hell no. Seal the file, protect the president, protect the powerful. To hell with justice for the victims, the young women who were so impacted, devastated by the activities of Jeffrey Epstein and his associates. The American people know better. They demand transparency. They demand accountability. They demand justice. The victims demand transparency. The victims demand accountability. And the victims demand justice. And we had a chance to deliver it today, and we failed them. My bill, which was introduced as the amendment by Senator Schumer, requires the Attorney General to release all materials and records related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, including the flight and travel records, the names of individuals, the names of businesses and nonprofits and other organizations, any immunity deals, any non-prosecution agreements, any plea bargains, any settlements, internal Department of Justice communications about decisions to charge or not charge those involved, all communications about attempts to conceal information or documents, and any documentation related to Mr. Epstein's detention or death. It makes one exception, and that exception is deleting the names of the victims involved. They should only be named if they choose to come forward. Let me quote from what this bill requires. No record should be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of...
The message was unmistakable. The era of hiding behind excuses, investigations, and redactions has hit a wall. And the person pushing it forward isn't doing it to score a headline. He's doing it because the pressure has reached a place that can no longer be ignored. When he announced that he filed an amendment requiring the Attorney General to release the full Epstein archive, it wasn't framed as a suggestion. It was framed as a demand from the public, Democrats, Republicans, independents, everyone who's watched this case get twisted, delayed, weaponized, and protected for far too long. And that's why the room got quiet. Because this wasn't political theater. This was an ultimatum. Show the truth. What makes this moment even more explosive is the fact that these files have been treated like radioactive material for years. Agencies have claimed ongoing investigations. Lawyers have claimed privacy concerns. Committees have blamed jurisdiction. And every time someone gets close to the truth, a new obstacle appears, as if the system itself is designed to keep the door shut. But today, that door finally rattled. The timing is just as important as the announcement. Reporters immediately asked why this wasn't pushed earlier when certain officials had more leverage. The answer was simple and blunt. The lies and misinformation have spiraled so far out of control that transparency is no longer optional. In recent months, we've seen fake sketches, manipulated images, and entire narratives built on rumors. It's been chaos by design, a storm of noise meant to distract people from the real question: who benefited from Epstein's silence? And that's exactly why this amendment hits so hard. It cuts through the distractions. It says, release every page and let people draw their own conclusions. No filters, no curation, no political protection. Because if the truth is harmless, then why spend decades hiding it? Of course, not everyone is thrilled. Some lawmakers immediately called the amendment hostile and suggested it could derail other negotiations. But think about that for a second. If transparency threatens your agenda, what does that say about your agenda? If releasing documents about a criminal case is considered dangerous, who exactly is being protected? That question hung in the air like smoke, and you could see the unease in the reactions. But the most fascinating part of all this is the person the amendment puts directly in the spotlight: the Attorney General. Over the past year, she's faced criticism for her political connections and for stepping carefully around anything involving this case. Now there's no middle ground. She can either comply with full transparency or become the face of yet another delay. And that's a choice that carries consequences on both sides. That if she releases everything, she opens the biggest set of documents tied to one of the darkest scandals in modern history. If she refuses, she confirms every suspicion people already have about why these files have been buried for so long. Either way, the country will be watching. And here's where things get even more intense. There's a lot of speculation online, unverified, but widely discussed, about what might be hidden inside these documents. Some reports claim the files contain unedited communications between Epstein and individuals across finance, politics, tech, and media. Others suggest there are travel logs, financial trails, and internal memos that have never seen daylight. Rumors even say that certain agencies raised quiet alarms years ago about what full transparency would expose. None of this is confirmed. But the fact that people have been left to guess is the biggest part of the problem. When institutions refuse to release information, speculation becomes the only thing people have. And speculation, especially around a case as disturbing as this, spreads like wildfire. That's why today matters. Because this amendment challenges all of it: the secrecy, the deflection, the excuses. It forces the system to make a choice between truth and protection, between accountability and convenience. And that's why the reaction has been so charged. Some officials want the documents released immediately. Others are pretending this amendment doesn't exist. And a few are already trying to shift the conversation to completely unrelated issues. But the public isn't confused anymore. People know what's happening. Every time someone pushes for the release of these files, the ground shakes a little. And every time the system tries to hold them back, people ask a little louder why. That momentum is what created this breaking point. This didn't happen because politicians suddenly felt brave. It happened because millions of people stopped accepting the same recycled excuses. But the public understands this much. Secrecy breeds doubt. Secrecy breeds suspicion. And secrecy destroys trust. Because when files like these are hidden, rumors grow louder, speculation becomes permanent, and institutions lose credibility. The irony is that releasing the files, properly redacted, would actually strengthen the system. It would allow investigators to follow dormant leads. It would allow journalists to trace patterns. It would give survivors validation and closure. And it would rebuild trust in a justice system that has been crumbling for years. Instead, the Senate chose the opposite. And Pam Bondi's refusal to release the files shaped the entire battle that led to this moment. But here's the part that the Senate underestimated. The public is awake. Survivors are speaking louder than ever. Advocacy groups are mobilizing. Journalists are digging aggressively. And citizens are demanding that this vote be revisited, that secrets be exposed, and that justice be more than a slogan carved in stone. Because that's the real story here. This isn't just about one trafficking case. It's about whether truth is still possible in a system built to protect the well-connected. It's about whether anyone believes the phrase, equal justice under law, still means something real. It's about whether ordinary people can force institutions to confront what they've tried to hide. And the truth is, they can. This vote can be brought back. Pressure can force transparency. Citizens can demand answers. Survivors can refuse silence. And justice can still win, but only if people refuse to look away. If you're still here, you're not just watching a video. You're part of the movement demanding accountability. And your voice matters. So if you want more deep dives into the stories that shape our justice system, hit subscribe. Like this video so more people learn what happened, and comment below with your thoughts on what Congress should do next to ensure the truth finally comes out. Because this fight isn't over, and together, we can make sure it never gets buried again.